When you have your group saying that the supply is stable for now, owing of course to the completion of imports from sugar orders number 2 and 3, plus of course the ongoing domestic operations. Nuance that for us a bit more. How stable exactly is stable? And up to when do you expect this to last? And beyond that, what should be done?
Well, we've had two sugar orders that authorize importation of sugar. The first was sugar order number 3 that authorized the importation of 200,000 metric tons, which has not yet been completed. The ones who were given the allocations have been given an extension that allows them to complete the importation by the end of this month or early next month. The second order, sugar order number 2 of the current crop year, authorizes the importation of 150,000 metric tons, and that will be completed by November 15. Given the peaking of the milling season at this time, the figures tell us that there will be adequate sugar supply for the next several months. Having said that, we do have to take a close look at the sugar supply demand situation sometime in April up to the end of the milling season or August of next year, because estimated production is about 1.8 to 1.9 million metric tons, while estimated demand is in the area of 2.4 million metric tons. So that's a shortfall, again, that we will have to meet. So there are many ifs and buts as far as the next several months are concerned. At this point in time, however, in answer to your question, yes, there will be adequate sugar supply to ease the supply shortage and to steady the prices. In fact, the mill gate prices for raw sugar have come down by about 400 to 500 pesos over the last 2 weeks. And that's an indication that there is adequate supply already.
Okay. Now, sir, can you take a step back a little bit, no? Because it's very hard to imagine that a country that produces so much sugar needs to be importing. Is this a short-term band-aid solution to, especially fighting inflation, perhaps driven by agricultural prices or, prices of fertilizer? Or is this something that you expect might be continuing for some time? And if so, how do you feel about importation of sugar?
Well, for one thing, we've lost about 25,000 hectares that were planted to sugarcane before.
Okay.
These 25,000 hectares have been converted either to commercial, residential purposes or other crops. Okay. So that's a large percentage of the sugar area that we've lost. Second, we have seen a drop in productivity. Last year, for example, we averaged more or less about 60 tons per hectare. In comparison to the industry's self-declared goal of 75,000 or 75 tons per hectare. There are many reasons for that drop in productivity. Number one is the weather. Weather has become very unpredictable. We've had to mill cane during the rainy season, and that is bad, of course, for the crop. The second reason is the rapid increase in the cost of inputs, particularly fertilizer and fuel. So if we want to drive sugar production up within the next few years, we will have to take drastic measures. And these are exactly what the sugar industry is thinking of, but we will need concerted effort between the private sector and government. So far, unfortunately, we have not heard too much in terms of details about what government proposes to do to reduce the cost of fertilizer and fuel, which is a major part of our cost of production. So yes, we do have a lot of work cut out for us. And in answer to your final question, I think The reality is that over the next several years, we are going to have to import sugar.
Okay. Now, sir, you've pointed out some exogenous factors, no, that are not necessarily under the control. But what about sugar smuggling? Is this something that's causing as well the shortage of sugar and the prices of sugar to be exorbitant?
Well, that's the other strange thing about the current situation. Um, we have not heard too much noise from the industrial users, the consumers, and institutional users about the shortage. They've complained about the prices, but in I guess in response to the authorized importation, they prefer to stay quiet for the meantime. But if you remember, the Bureau of Customs apprehended about 76 containers of refined sugar that were declared as unauthorized. No?
Okay.
In other words, in simple terms, it's smuggled. Uh, the mere presence of smuggled sugar coming in through the Bureau of Customs indicates to us that some users have preferred to explore other sources other than just the legitimate sources of sugar. This has always been a threat to the industry and to
Okay.
agriculture in general. Uh, Anti-smuggling operations have been supported by the sugar industry for many years, but it's becoming more and more difficult because of the cost involved. Uh, Anti-smuggling operations will have to be a comprehensive, concerted effort. It is not enough to stop the traffic at the Bureau of Customs. What we used to do was to obtain intelligence information that would tell us sugar was leaving the ports of Thailand. And we would then be informed as to whether that sugar had authority from the Sugar Regulatory Administration or not. And if it did not have the authority, then we would alert the Bureau of Customs on the possible entry. And we were thus able to contain the smuggling over the past many years. But this time, however, given the limitations of resources available to the sugar industry, we will have to expect more effort from the government in terms of stopping the smuggling. But again, as I said, it's not enough to just stop it at the Bureau of Customs. We have to stop it at source.
Okay.
Sir, can you clarify that for us? What do you mean exactly by limitation of resources here?
Well, the sugar industry used to spend quite a lot to finance our anti-smuggling operations. We had our own anti-smuggling intelligence operations that gave us the information. It's become too expensive for us to maintain this.
Like how
given
much,
the
if you have
production.
figures?
How's that?
If you have figures, like how much does it normally cost to actually continue this anti-smuggling operations?
Well, you have to retain a certain number of experts and intelligence personnel who will have a network of intelligence agents in various ports of entry and in the ports of exit. Okay, and you need to retain them on a monthly basis. So we're talking about millions of pesos.
All right. Sir, final question here. What should be the suggested retail price for sugar? You've got Kadiwa stores rolling out 70 per kilo, but of course, importation,
Right.
supposedly bringing down the prices, but then we do want to protect the farmers that have to deal with expensive input costs. What is an amenable price point, especially for our consumers as well?
At this point in time, I think somewhere between around 85 pesos per kilo. Given the current buying prices, Millgate of raw sugar, the prices, by the way, have come down over the last 2 weeks. I think we're down by about 500 pesos per bag.
Okay.
It had already approached 4,000. We're now looking at about 3,500. If you add all the costs, refining, shipping, hauling, handling, repacking, refining, and traders' margins, you're looking at somewhere around 85 pesos as a reasonable retail price. So when retail prices exceed that amount at this point in time, the DTI, or the Department of Trade and Industry, and the Department of Agriculture will need to ask those involved. You know, the sad thing here is that it is not the producers who dictate the prices. We're price takers. The traders and the distributors and the retailers are the ones who decide how much the sugar will be paid
Ultimately.
for and how much it will sell for. When prices go above reasonable levels, the DTI normally gets on our backs, meaning the SRA, and asks why are prices too high, and then we get to the bottom of the problem. My suggestion is for the DTI and the DA to talk to all the traders, the distributors, and retailers and ask them for receipts on how much their sugar costs them,
Okay.
and to justify retail prices in excess of what I mentioned. Because my suspicion is there could be some profiteering going on for the last several months.